Hello students, welcome to this lecture on the course Principles of Political Science. Today's lecture on interdisciplinary approach, political science and geography. In our previous sessions, we have explored the relationship between political science and economics, and today we continue our journey through the interdisciplinary approach by examining a fourth and equally important connection between political science and geography. Geography adds a dimension to political analysis that no other discipline can provide: space. Politics does not happen in the abstract. It happens in specific places across specific territories with a specific physical environment and natural resources that shape what is possible and what is contested. Understanding the spatial and environmental dimension of politics is the central purpose of today's lecture. Here is our agenda for today. We will begin with the meaning and scope of geography as an academic discipline. We will then explore the two-way relationship between political science and geography. We will study key linking concepts including territory, sovereignty, geopolitics, and natural resources. We will examine Indian example, India's borders and territorial disputes, river water conflicts between states, and regional development differences across the country. Before we explore the relationship between the two disciplines, we must clearly understand what geography means as an academic discipline. The word geography comes from the ancient word geo, meaning earth, and graphia, meaning writing or description. Literally, geography means writing about or describing the earth. It is one of the oldest academic disciplines with roots in the work of ancient Greek scholars like Eratosthenes, who calculated the circumference of the earth with remarkable accuracy in the 3rd century BCE, and Strabo, who produced one of the earliest systematic geographical description of the known world. Modern geography is defined as the study of the Earth's physical features, environment, and spatial distribution of phenomena, both natural and human. It examines how physical processes shape the planet's surface, how human beings adapt to and modify their physical environments, and how the spatial distribution of populations, resources, and human activities varies across the globe. Geography operates at two broad levels. Physical geography studies the natural environment, landforms, climate, rivers, soil, ecosystem, and natural hazards. Human geography studies the spatial patterns of human activity, population distribution, urban development, economic activities, cultural landscape, and political organization. It is human geography, and particularly political geography, that has the closest and most direct relationship with political science. Geography as an academic discipline has been shaped by a number of influential thinkers and has produced several important subfields relevant to political science. Friedrich Ratzel, a German geographer writing in the late 19th century, was one of the first to systematically study the relationship between geography and politics. Ratzel introduced the concept of Lebensraum, or living space, arguing that states, like organisms, need to expand territorially to survive and grow. While this concept was dangerously misused by Nazi ideology in the 20th century, it introduced the idea that states have geographical dimensions to their power and survival. Halford Mackinder, the British geographer, is perhaps one of the most influential figure in the study of geopolitics. In his famous paper, The Geographical Pivot of History, delivered in 1904, Mackinder argued that whoever controls the Eurasian heartland, the vast interior of the Eurasian landmass, would ultimately control the world. His heartland theory provides a geographical framework for thinking about global power competition that influenced strategic thinking throughout the 20th century. Nicholas Spikeman, an American scholar, countered Mackinder by arguing in the 1940s that power lay not in the heartland but in the rimland, the coastal regions surrounding the Eurasian interior. Spikeman's theory influenced American Cold War containment strategy. One of the most fundamental observations connecting political science and geography is that geographical features directly influence political boundaries and political decisions. Political boundaries, the lines of separate sovereign states and administrative units, are not drawn arbitrarily. They reflect geographical realities such as mountain ranges, rivers, deserts, coastlines, and other natural features that historically served as natural barriers and frontier zones. Mountain ranges have frequently served as natural political boundaries. The Himalayas have historically formed the northern boundary of the Indian subcontinent, shaping India's political relationship with China and Nepal. The Alps have long separated different European cultures and political systems. Rivers have similarly served as boundaries. The Rhine has historically separated France and Germany, and the Indus River system influenced the boundaries of the ancient civilization of the subcontinent. Geographical features also influence political decisions beyond boundaries. A state's access to sea or its lack of access fundamentally shapes its economic and military capabilities. Landlocked states like Nepal, Afghanistan, and several Central Asian republics face structural disadvantages in trade and strategic projections compared to coastal states. Islands like Sri Lanka and Japan developed distinguished political histories because insular geography provided natural protection and encouraged maritime trade, illustrating how physical features shape political development. Just as geography influences politics, political science, political decisions, and political actions actively shape control over territory, special organizations, and the geographical environment. This reverse relationship from politics to geography is equally important for understanding how the world we live in has been organized. Political decisions have directly created many of the world's current geographical realities. The partition of the Indian subcontinent in 1947, for example, was a political decision that fundamentally reorganized the geography of South Asia. It created new state boundaries, displaced approximately 15 million people, divided river systems, disrupted trade routes, and redrew the entire political map of the region. This partition, decided in the space of a few weeks by the Boundary Commission chaired by Sir Radcliffe, produced geographical consequences that continue to shape the politics of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh to this day. Colonial political decisions similarly reorganized the geography of Africa, Asia, and the Americas. European colonial powers drew boundaries in Africa that divided ethnic communities, imposed artificial boundaries on diverse population, and created states whose geographical shapes reflected the outcomes of negotiations among European power rather than any African geographical or social logic. These politically imposed geographical arrangements have contributed to many of the territorial conflicts and governance challenges that African states continue to face. Geography makes its first major contribution to political science by providing the tools to, understand political boundaries and territorial disputes, understanding where boundaries are drawn, why they are contested, and what makes some border stable while others become flashpoints of conflict requires geographical knowledge of political science alone cannot provide. Political boundaries are of two types. Natural boundaries follow physical geographical features like rivers, mountain ridges, coastlines, or deserts. Artificial boundaries are drawn by political engagements and follow lines of latitude, longitude, or other non-geographical markers. Most boundaries in the real world are a combination of both types, but the degree to which boundaries align with or cut across natural geographical features has a significant impact on their stability and legitimacy. The concept of territorial disputes, conflict over which state has sovereign authority over a particular piece of territory, is central to both geography and political science. Geography helps identify what makes territories disputed: strategic location, natural resources, cultural heritage, or historical claims. Political science explains the political and legal frameworks through which such disputes are managed, negotiated, or fought over. In the Indian context, India's boundaries with China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh are all areas of significant geographical and political complexity. Geography makes a second important contribution to political science by demonstrating how climate and natural resources influence political behavior, political conflict, and government policy. The physical environment is not merely backdrop to political activity, it is a powerful shaper of political possibilities, political priorities, and political conflict. Climate exerts a profound influence on agriculture, food security, and economic activity, all of which have direct political consequences. Regions with reliable rainfall, fertile soil, and modern temperatures tend to support dense, more prosperous populations and more stable political systems. Regions with harsh climates, extreme aridity, intense cold, or unpredictable monsoons face higher risk of food insecurity and thus political instability. That goes together. Natural resources are among the most politically significant geographical variables. Oil and gas reserves, mineral deposits, freshwater resources or sources, arable land, and forest sources or resources are unevenly distributed across the Earth's surface. The uneven distribution creates major political consequences. Resource-rich territories become targets of political competition, military intervention, and territorial disputes. Resources-poor states may become economically dependent on resource-rich countries, creating asymmetrical political relationship. The resource curse, identified by Richard Otte, describes how countries abundant in oil and minerals often experience weaker democratic institutions and political conflict because revenues allow rulers to avoid accountability to citizens. The third major contribution of geography to political science is the concept of strategic location and the field of geopolitics. Geopolitics studies how geographical location, natural features, and spatial relations between states shape their political power, strategic interest, and foreign policy behavior. It is one of the most direct points of intersection between geography and political science, and it has had enormous influence on how states think about their security and how they define their or shape their international relations. Strategic locations refers to geographical positions of a state relative to trade routes, rival powers, natural resources, and potential adversaries. States in strategically important locations often have greater political leverage than their size or economic strength would suggest. Singapore, for example, is a small city with no natural resources, yet it has become one of the most prosperous and politically influential states in Southeast Asia because of its location at the Strait of Malacca, one of the world's busiest and most strategically vital shipping lanes, through which approximately one-third of global maritime trade passes annually. Choke points are strategically vital, narrow passages through which naval and commercial traffic must pass, including the Strait of Hormuz, the Suez Canal, the Strait of Malacca, and the Bab el-Mandeb. Political science makes its first major contribution to geography by explaining how states and political boundaries are formed, legitimated and contested, while geography describes where boundaries are located and what physical features they follow. Political science explains the political process through which boundaries come to exist and the political theories that justify or challenge them. The formation of a state is one of the most fundamental topics in political science. Theories of state formation range from social contract theories, which argue that states are created by the consent of people or amongst the people who agree to surrender certain freedoms in exchange for security and governance, to conquest theories, which explain the historical reality that most states were created through military force and territorial control. International law, a field closely connected to political science and international relations, provides the formal framework for recognizing states and their boundaries. The principle of sovereign equality, that all recognized states are equal in international law, regardless of size, power, or wealth, is a political science concept with profound geographical implications. It means that the geographical boundary of a small state like Maldives is legally as valid and inviolable as the boundary of a large state like United States. The second major contribution of political science to geography is its systematic analysis of how political science or how political systems govern territory. Territory is not simply a physical space, it is a politically governed space. The way in which states organize, administer and control their territories is fundamentally a political question, and political science provides the conceptual tools for understanding territorial governance. Federal systems of government, for example, divide territorial authority between national governments and subnational units, states, province or regions. India's federal system, established by the Constitution of 1950, divides the country into states and union territories and distributes legislative and executive authority between the central and the state governments and the states through the three lists in this 7th schedule. They identify what is the jurisdiction of a state government and what is the jurisdiction of central government. Understanding how this political arrangement shaped the governance of India's vast and geographically diverse territory requires the combined tools of political science and geography. Decentralization, the transfer of authority from central to periphery or to the local bodies, is another political process with significant geographical implications. The 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment of 1992 established the Panchayat Raj system, bringing governance to the village level across India's geographically varied rural areas. This political decision transformed the special organization of governance, bringing political authority physically closer to the population it serves. Among the key concepts that connects political science and geography, territory and sovereignty form the most fundamental pair. These two concepts are inseparable. Together, they define the modern state and its relationship to the physical space it occupies and controls. Territory refers to a defined geographical space over which a political authority exercises exclusive control, which is called sovereignty. The concept of territory is central to both geography and political science. For geographers, territory is a physical space with specific boundaries, locations, topographic and resource characteristics. For political scientists, territory is the spatial foundation of the state. Without territory, there can be no state. In the modern sense, the legal and political concept of territorial sovereignty, the exclusive right of a state to govern its own territory without external interference, emerged from the Peace of Westphalia in 1648 and has been the cornerstone of international political system ever since. Sovereignty over territory is what makes a state in international law. It gives the state the right to make and enforce laws within its borders, to control entry and exit across its boundaries, and to claim the natural resources located within its territory. Territorial integrity is enshrined in the UN Charter, yet disputes continue, showing political legitimacy is essential for stable geographical arrangements. Geopolitics is perhaps the single most important concepts linking political science and geography, and it deserves close examination. Geopolitics is the study of how geographical factors like location, terrain, climate, natural resources, and spatial ships between states influence the political power, strategic interest, and international behavior of states. The classical tradition of geopolitics associated with thinkers like Mackinder, Mahan, and Spikeman sought to identify geographical constants and determine which state will be powerful and which will be weak. Alfred Thayer Mahan, the American naval strategist, argued in The Influence of Sea Power Upon History, published in 1890, that command of the seas was the key to national power and global dominance. His ideas directly influenced the naval buildup of major powers in the late 19th and early 20th century. The contemporary relevance of geopolitics is evident in global power competition in the Indo-Pacific region. China's expanding naval presence is in the South China Sea. Its construction of artificial islands and its growing maritime ambitions directly reflect the geopolitical logic of seeking control over strategically vital waters. The United States Indo-Pacific strategy, with its emphasis on maintaining freedom of navigation and supporting regional partners, represent a counter-geographical response. Natural resources represent a third key concept linking geography and political science, and the political dimensions of resource distribution are amongst the most consequential in both disciplines. Natural resources, oil, natural gas, coal, freshwater, minerals, fertile land, and fisheries are gifts of geography. They are distributed unevenly across the globe or across the Earth's surface, and this uneven distribution generates political consequences of the greatest importance. Oil is the natural resource most visibly connected to geopolitics and political power. The Middle East contains approximately 48% of the whole of the world's proven oil reserves, a geographical fact that has made the region the center of global strategic competition for over a century. The 1973 Arab oil embargo, which quadrupled global oil prices and triggered severe economic disruption in oil importing countries, demonstrated with devastating clarity how a geographical resource can become a political weapon. Water is increasingly recognized as the natural resource most likely to generate political conflicts in the 21st century. Freshwater resources are concentrated in certain geographical areas and are unevenly shared between states. Rivers that cross international boundaries, known as transboundary rivers, create inherent political tensions between upstream and downstream states. The Nile dispute, intensified by Ethiopia's Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and India's water conflict, illustrate how uneven freshwater geography drives political tension. We have a new term now, water diplomacy. India's border represents one of the richest and most complex examples of the intersection of geography and political science anywhere in the world. India shares land borders with 7 countries: Pakistan, China, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Afghanistan. A short stretch in Jammu Kashmir claimed by India. And maritime boundaries with Sri Lanka and Maldives in the Indian Ocean. The management and contestation of these borders is a defining feature of India's foreign policy and strategic environment. The most geographically and politically complex of India's boundaries is with China. India and China share a disputed boundary of approximately 3,488 kilometers, the line of actual control. This boundary was never formally delimited and demarcated, and both countries hold different perceptions of where it lies. The geographical terrain, high altitude Himalayan plateaus, glaciers, and remote mountain passes makes boundary management exceptionally challenging. The Doklam standoff of 2017 and the Galwan Valley of clash of June 2020, in which 20 Indian soldiers and an unspecified number of Chinese soldiers were killed, demonstrated how geographical disputes can escalate into serious military confrontations. India's boundary with Pakistan in the region of Jammu and Kashmir is governed by the line of control established by the Shimla Agreement of 1972. India's river water disputes represent another compelling illustration of how geography and politics intersect within the country. India is crossed by numerous major river systems, many of which flow through multiple states before reaching the sea. Since water is essential for agriculture, drinking, industry, household requirements, and hydroelectric power, its distribution among competing states generates intense political conflicts within the country. Kaveri River water dispute between the states of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu is one of India's oldest and most contentious interstate water conflict. The Kaveri originates in the Brahmagiri Hills in Karnataka and flows through Tamil Nadu before emptying into the Bay of Bengal. Karnataka, as the upstream state, controls the initial flow of the river, while Tamil Nadu, as the downstream state, is heavily dependent on its waters for the irrigation of the Kaveri Delta, one of the most agriculturally productive regions in South India. Disputes over waters sharing dates back to agreements made under British control or British colonial rule in 1892 and 1924 and have continued into the present through legal proceedings before the Kaveri Water Disputes Tribunal and the Supreme Court of India. The Satluj-Yamuna link canal disputes between Punjab and Haryana is another long-running interstate water conflict. Regional development differences across India provide a third major example of how geography and political science intersect within this country. India is an extraordinarily geographically diverse country. Its territory encompasses the Himalayan mountain ranges, the Indo-Gangetic plains, the Thar desert, the Deccan plateau, the Western Ghat, the Eastern Ghat, extensive coastlines, and the island territories of Andaman and Nicobar and Lakshadweep. This geographical diversity has contributed to significant disparities in economic development across regions. The southern states of India, particularly Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, Telangana, and Andhra Pradesh, have generally achieved higher levels of economic development, human development, and industrial growth than many northern and eastern states. The Niti Aayog's Sustainable Development Goals in India India Index and Multi-Dimensional Poverty Index have consistently documented these regional disparities. Kerala, for example, has achieved near universal literacy, low infant mortality, and high human development indicators that compares favorably with the middle income countries, while states like Bihar and Jharkhand continue to have much lower development indicators. These regional differences are partly geographical. Southern states have more accessible coastlines for maritime trade, different agricultural patterns, and historically distinct social and political structures, but they are also political, the result of different governance quality and investment. Understanding these patterns requires both geography and political science working together. Now, we can compare political science and geography to understand their key differences. While the two disciplines are deeply connected through their shared interest in territory, space, and the organization of human communities, they have distinct emphasis, methods, and fundamental concerns. The most fundamental difference lies in the primary focus. While geography focuses on space and Earth's physical and human features, it asks where things are located, why they are located there, and what special patterns and relationships characterize human and natural phenomena. Political science focuses on power and political institutions, as we have discussed many times. The second difference is methodological. Geography makes extensive use of spatial data, maps, satellite imagery, remote sensing, and geographical information systems. These spatial tools allow geographers to visualize, measure, and analyze, the distribution of phenomenon across space with a precision that political science does not typically employ. Rather, it relies more on textual analysis, institutional analysis, survey data, historical comparison, and formal political theory. Now, the interdisciplinary relationship, while intellectually rich and practically important, also has limitations. The first limitation is geographical determinism, the fallacy of attributing political outcomes entirely to geographical factors while ignoring human agency, influential choices, and historical contingencies. Geographical determinism has a troubling intellectual history. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, some geographers and political thinkers argued that the climate of tropical regions made their people inherently less capable and self-governance and less capable of self-governance, providing pseudo-scientific justification for colonial rule. This type of deterministic thinking has been thoroughly discredited. Modern scholars must be careful to treat geographical factors as influences on political outcomes and not as deterministic cause. Same geographical the circumstances, an island location, a resource-rich territory, a strategically placed frontier can produce very different political outcomes depending on the quality of institutions, the choice of leaders, and the specific historical context. The second limitation is the difficulty of incorporating dynamic change. Geography deals with the features that seem fixed, mountains, rivers, coastline, but these features are actually subject to change over geographical and even human time scale through erosion, sea level rises, river course changes, and human modifications. The relationship between the two disciplines has really been more relevant than it is today. Three contemporary issues illustrate this with particular clarity: climate change and its political consequences, conflicts over natural resources, and shifting patterns of global geopolitics. Climate change represents perhaps the most profound intersection of geography and political science in the 21st century. Climate change is fundamentally a geographical phenomena. It alters rainfall patterns, sea levels, temperature distribution, and ecosystem phenomena. In especially specific ways, but it equally is a political phenomena caused primarily by political decisions of industrialized states about energy production and requiring political solutions through international agreements, national legislation, and local governance. We have the example of Paris Agreement of 2015, under which nearly 200 countries committed to, limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, then we can very well see the resource conflicts over water and maritime territory intensify globally. We have completed lecture 9. Let us consolidate the key ideas. You see that we began by linking this lecture to lecture 8 on political science and economics. Then we switched over to the relationship between the two disciplines by defining geography and by defining political science separately. We emphasized or we traced the development of political geography through thinkers like Mackinder, Mann and Spikeman. We established the two-way relationship between the two disciplines. Geography influences political boundaries and decisions, while political decisions actively reshape territory and special organizations. We examined how geography contributes to political science through understanding territorial disputes, demonstrating the political significance of climate and natural resources, and providing the framework of geopolitics. We saw how political science contribute to geography by explaining state formation, boundary legitimation, and territorial governance. We discussed territory, sovereignty, geopolitics, and natural resources through Indian examples. The central lesson: geography shapes political possibilities and politics shape geographical realities. Neither discipline is complete without the other. Thank you.